we were talking a minute ago about how important pain catastrophizing is, and the measure that's typically used is called the Pain Catastrophizing Scale. That was published in 1995, and we've been interested to see if there are other dimensions of pain catastrophizing other than what Mick Sullivan found, and that was magnification, rumination, and helplessness. And we've done a lot of work with a variety of measures that tap into negative cognitions associated with pain. And what we have found in general is that if we reanalyze the data with all of these measures to come up with a overall global catastrophizing measure, there's a variety of ways to parse it, but one way to parse it is a depressive content of cognition, and also a pain intensity, really focusing on the intensity dimension. Mick Sullivan called that magnification, but really focusing and ruminating about the intensity dimension. And then a dimension that really hasn't been tapped into with other measures of catastrophizing, and that is awfulizing about the possibility of what happens next. And so worst case scenario kind of thing. Ben compared in this study of 300 participants, Ben compared the Pain Catastrophizing Scale to another scale, which I'd like you to talk about.
So a couple years back, before I was around, one of our previous graduate students took a lot of these other scales of awfulizing, catastrophizing, and put them in a pool. And then another graduate student narrowed them down and tested that pool of items with undergraduate students doing a cold pressor test, so putting their hand in cold water, seeing how they thought about and responded to the pain. And that helped generate a smaller pool of items that we've called the composite catastrophizing measure short form. It's 14 items that are taken from things like the Pain Catastrophizing Scale, but also the Pain Assessment Inventory, Coping Skills Questionnaire. And the idea was to get at that, the worry aspect, which is that sort of awfulizing what's going to happen, worst case scenario, as well as capturing the preoccupation. And those were the two factors that came out of those data. So that was a non-clinical sample, and we didn't know if that same factor structure would replicate with clinical participants. So we used that measure along with the PCS in the randomized control trial and compared the baseline data and found that the composite catastrophizing measure the data fell out the same way, basically, as they do with a non-clinical sample. The differences were that the clinical sample had higher scores of catastrophizing by about 10 points on the total scale score, which is a pretty good difference. But overall, the factors were the same, the items performed the same. It had strong correlations with the PCS as well as with pain intensity and pain interference, which are important pain outcome variables. We're interested in looking at more longitudinally which of these two scales in the long term will actually be the best predictor of people's pain outcomes and their performance in these group treatments.